Now, I'm going to make this a short live tonight. I'm just going to go ahead and hit the Tyler Robinson thing again for one specific reason. I wanted to talk about what evidence do they actually have against Tyler Robinson. They got a bunch of grainy video, which you cannot tell who that is. Now, they used AI generation to increase the resolution so that we can see that person. Now, there are plenty of people out there that disagree with the fact that you're able to determine that is Tyler Robinson in those videos. Candace Owens is one of them. Now, I don't agree with everything that she's saying right now because she's got some wild conspiracies going on. But I definitely have to agree that there's no way you could ultimately determine that it is Tyler Robinson in those videos. You cannot be absolutely certain of that. That's not 100%. And the only physical evidence that we have against Tyler Robinson is a fingerprint on that Mauser 98 that was found in the woods. My question is that gun a decoy? Is that the actual weapon that he used in the shooting? If it was him that did the shooting, I personally believe it was. But could that weapon be a decoy? It very well could be. Could the actual weapon that he used be taken somewhere else and gotten rid of, and he had left that one in the woods before he even committed the act? So that it would allow them to present reasonable doubt in court as to whether or not he was the actual shooter? It's possible. Now, more than likely, since they're not going to be able to get a ballistic match, they did get the bullet. I did find this out. They did get the main fragment of the bullet out of Charlie Kirk. But since the bullet was destroyed, they're not going to be able to get a ballistic match. What they could possibly do, if you're familiar with forensic investigations, is get a metallurgic match to the other bullets that were in that rifle that they found. The ones that were engraved with the furry culture lingo, like OWO, I think is what it was, or can you see my bulge and catch this fascist? Some of the things he had written on there, the anti-fascist statements, these were all written on the shell casings. So they may be able to get a metallurgic match to the other bullets, linking them together, but they're not going to be able to get a ballistic match. So that's not the smoking gun. Now, it is, obviously extremely good physical circumstantial evidence, but it's not a smoking gun to say that that's absolute. It's something that's definitely linking him to it because they've got his fingerprint on the gun, but they can't get a ballistic match. So since that's the only thing they have definitively, physically, the other evidence they've got is this, that his father said that he confessed to him, but he never actually made an actual confession to law enforcement. And the texts that are on his phone, they're seemingly AI generated, the ones that were received by Lance Twiggs. And when I say AI generated, there was someone out there that actually took the text messages and then ran them against an algorithm to tell them whether or not they could possibly be AI generated. And it came back 100% match as to something that could be or would or is AI generated. They seemed extremely staged to say something very specific, and it was to prevent Lance Twiggs from being indicted on as being a co-conspirator. This is my personal opinion on this, but I would say that's the case. And now, is it possible that he could be considered as aiding and abetting after the fact because he did not immediately go to law enforcement? It took law enforcement going to him, and then he revealed those text messages? That's a possibility, but no one's mentioned that. Now, I do believe that Kash Patel is in the works on investigating co-conspirators right now, but there's not been a release. I think he actually came out and made a statement as to that. He was actually investigating co-conspirators at the moment. But I'm going to have to go back and look into that because I think I just heard it as a byword on another newscast. I didn't actually see where he did it himself. I didn't actually see what he said either. So that's something I'm going to be looking into after this. The prosecuting attorney is going to have its work cut out for it in this case. Tyler Robinson has attained an attorney, but it just so happens the attorney he's attained is a public defender. Now, you don't want a public defender if you're in a death penalty case, because the odds of you winning that case are very slim. They are very slim prior to that, but if you're going to use a public defender in this death penalty case in Utah, you can pretty much guarantee you're going to be standing in front of the firing squad because I think you get a choice of what it is that you're going to be executed by, I think it's firing squad, lethal injection, and then something else. But if I'm him, I'm taking the firing squad. But you can pretty much guarantee that if he's got a public defender, he's going to be facing a bunch of guns here before too long. Hopefully, since we have such a large lack of physical evidence, they're going to be able to construct a case against him based on the events leading up to the assassination. They're going to go back into his search history. They're going to be able to go back into his life and find out exactly what he was doing, who he was talking to, what they were talking about in general. Obviously, they're going to be able to get a warrant to do this. But if everything has not been scrubbed clean and they're able to find it, they're going to be able to construct a timeline of events leading up to the assassination that's going to be able to put him away, seeing as how we have such a lack of physical evidence. Hopefully they do have the gun. Hopefully that gun they found isn't a decoy. Hopefully it is the weapon that he used. But again, I've talked about this prior too. A 30-06 bullet going into somebody at 150 yards and traveling down their spine, exploding in their chest, and then traveling back up into their neck is kind of odd. Generally, something like that would happen with a smaller caliber bullet. Like a 22, when you shoot a 22 into something, especially at that distance, it's going to bounce around. But a 30-06, which is a high-powered rifle, that's likely you're going to have it through and through. Maybe it's the fact that Charlie Kirk's neck was just extremely muscular, but when you consider the big game animals that are being shot with a 30-06, they're extremely muscular. And a lot of times you're going to get it through and through on those animals. So to say that a human being with, a neck that's not even, I would say, half or a third of the size of like a wild boar's body, where you would get a side shot and it would go through and through on that side shot, it's just hard for me to believe that it's going to go into his neck, travel down it, explode in his chest, and end up back in his throat. But that's what the experts are saying is possible, and that's what the medical examiner has said. And that statement was able to be released. It's not some kind of a HIPAA violation. Erica Kirk said the medical examiner could release what he found in his examination of Charlie Kirk, even though there was not a full autopsy. There was obviously a medical examination of him after the assassination. So let me grab a drink here. So hopefully what we're seeing here, that hopefully he did not scrub the information. And what I'm talking about is Tyler Kirk. He didn't not scrub the information from his computer or any of his other devices. And I would hope that the FBI is not going to commit to a cover-up in this. I don't know any reason why they should. But when you look at the Trump assassination and Thomas Crooks, what happened there, a lot of that evidence was scrubbed of Thomas Crooks from the internet and from his devices by the FBI, apparently. And before the evidence could be fully scrubbed, a lot of it was actually able to be pulled off of line concerning his internet history. And what they showed was that he had a violent tendency, and some of his violent tendencies were revealed in his post about Democrats. Yeah, that's right. Thomas Crooks was, prior to COVID, a Democrat. So something happened during COVID with Trump, and it just turned Thomas Crooks around, and he went far left instead of somewhat right. Or he was, I don't want to say he was extremist right, but he was definitely violent right, whatever it was that he was toward the right. He was right-leaning, right-wing, and extremely violent. He was talking about chopping off the heads of Democrats and putting them on stakes that were against Trump. So any Democrat that was out there that was against Trump, he wanted to chop their heads off and put them on stakes. He also said some things to the effect that he wanted to line up all the socialist Jews and shoot them. Now, I believe he was talking about socialist Jews, the ones that are on the media, the same ones that Charlie Kirk was actually talking about before he died. And I don't want to get into a conspiracy about that, but even Charlie Kirk was out there talking about that, how the Jews own the media, and that he believed that the Benjamin Netanyahu regime over there right now was going to go into Gaza and commit ethnic cleansing. But this guy was of that same persuasion years and years and years ago. He was on that right side, but he was a violent right-leaning person, and he wanted to go out and commit violent acts against the other side. And what ended up happening, as we clearly know by now, is that he was turned to the left, and then he ended up trying to execute Trump. He ended up trying to assassinate Trump. And in that same respect, we look at some of the evidence during that assassination attempt. There were tons of people, like 30 minutes before that shooting, that saw Thomas Crooks up on the building. And if we go over here to the Charlie Kirk assassination, what do we see? There's actually video of online of people that said they saw a person prior to the assassination. Now, they didn't actually have video of him crossing the building, but they were showing video of what looked like a person up on top of the building before the shooting. So why didn't they go to the authorities? I believe Candace Owens actually interviewed those people. I'm actually going to try and find that interview and find out what happened in that respect. Why did those people not go? Why did the people in the incident with Thomas Crooks, why did they not go directly to Trump's Secret Service and say, hey, there's a man up on top of a building with a gun? I don't know how anybody didn't see the ladder in that case. So there's a lot of questions with that one. I'd still want to know where that investigation goes. There's just a ton of activity going on right now on the left side of the aisle, shooting at the right. And it's starting to get more and more and more violent. And we're looking at people that are following, like, with a copycat, in the case of this, scratching or engraving the shell casings prior to the shooting of the ICE, or trying to shoot at the ICE agents. Apparently this guy wasn't as good a shot as Tyler Robinson was, but, you know, he was actually shooting at the people that he was supposedly trying to help. So he's out there indiscriminately just firing across the street at this ICE facility, and he's hitting the detainees. So not only is the left committing violence, they don't even directly know who it is that they're committing violence against. They think they're committing it against the right, and they're out there shooting the people they're supposedly trying to help. That just leads me to believe that they're not just politically leaning left. They're not just woke. They're not just have some kind of weird construction of delusional reality. They're literally mentally ill, because you don't go out and try to help people by just randomly shooting across the street. I think these people are just mentally ill. They want to commit violence, and the rhetoric on the left is to commit violence. So not only are they leaning that way, it's because they want to commit violence. So they're going over to this side, and they're going over to this woke indoctrination because they want to commit violence themselves. So this is just an outlet for them to do it. Is that a possibility? I think that it really is. But I'm going to keep up on all this information, and I'm going to go back and do some more research tonight. It's